Hello, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you to season 4 of Music with a Twist. Now, today I have with me the excited and bubbly Sarah Page. Sarah, it's so wonderful to have you, and it's such a pleasure. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what makes you so ecstatic?
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you so much for having me. This literally is my first podcast I've done, so hello to everyone listening. Yeah, I am an executive coach for women in the music industry. I'm a Brit. Moved to America 3 years ago. Lived in LA for a bit. Now in New York, and I am former music industry. I worked for over 20 years in the business, primarily for at least a decade, working for major record labels in a business development role, which is sales ultimately and a door opener, and working with retail. So to age myself slightly, we're talking about putting CDs and physical products into retail, not digital. And then when I was 34, I was kind of bored of being up against a glass ceiling and I didn't know my path forwards. And so I decided to leave major record labels and went to work in music merchandise again for probably about another decade, working for a distributor across Europe for brands such as Live Nation.
Okay, pretty cool. Now, hearing a little bit about you. So, how did you get into the music business? Was it like a first thought? Was it like, well, heck, let me just do it? How did that happen?
Yeah, I think of all of everyone's stories that I hear, there's always a bit element of luck in these things. I did a journalism degree. I wanted to be a music journalist. I tried for a while, working for some internet sites and online portals, but it wasn't meant to be. And I'd ended up working in a record store full time after graduating, much to my parents' absolute dismay. And then I got a phone call from Handle Recruitment, who are an entertainment-based recruiter, asking me if I'd want to go for an interview for BMG Records. And they had an internship position that they needed to fill. I was like, well, I'm not really an intern because, I was in my early 20s at this point, but hey, why not? Had the interview, realized it was a way into this magical world, and was hired. And I ended up going through the BMG Sony merger, worked for them about 7 years in total, and worked my way up. So fundamentally started as an intern in a business, worked hard. This is the days when there was no rules. Like, I'm picking up people's laundry in the day and all sorts. You really are quite mistreated as an intern. Anything goes, it seems. I've got some funny stories from that time. But fundamentally, that was the platform that catapulted my career in music. Realised I loved it. Wasn't going to be a music journalist, but was really happy selling products, talking to people, being a door opener. And yeah, that's how I got started.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. It's amazing to see, that you built straight from internship and you went straight up to, high levels. So, what would you say is a high point for you and a low point? I heard you, pivoting from music journalism and then moving straight into Sony and working with major companies as such. And how has it affected you, as a woman in leadership?
So highs and lows, yeah. I mean, I think every week there are highs and lows in music. There are, you're meeting artists, you're at gigs. It's an exciting, fast-paced industry. You're working on albums that you can only dream of when you're, as a kid. And then, yeah, there are lows. It's very competitive. Not everyone is helpful in that environment in supporting you. So for me, my high and low is oddly one and the same, I think. When I decided that I didn't feel that I could get into leadership as I saw it, working for major record labels, but at the same time decided to take matters into my own hand, to back myself and be basically, I could have stayed working for majors probably for at least another decade, but I really wanted to earn more money. I wanted more responsibility. I wanted to be a bigger fish in a, well, it didn't even have to be a bigger pond, actually. So that's why I moved into merchandise. And again, that's another very fast-paced, competitive industry. So my high and low point in my career is kind of at the same point. It was a realization that I didn't feel that there was a path forward for me in leadership at labels, but then having the guts to say, right, what am I going to do about this? Okay, I'm going to leave and segue into an industry where I do feel like I can make that path for myself. Oh,
Okay. Go ahead.
what was the question about women? Because I do want to answer that.
Now, I know for sure, I know that you are a consultant, right? And we will talk a lot about that coming down to the end. Now, I wanted to know now, based on your change, how have you seen women, in leadership now after having to break the glass ceiling, and working in corporate with a lot of men and multicultural, cultures as well? How do you see women, stepping up into leadership even more? You know.
Yeah, great question. One of the reasons I became an executive coach is to help more women get into leadership. Currently, 84% of senior leaders in big businesses are white men, and that statistic needs to change. Part of the work that I do with women. And I think a part of it is that some women struggle even with identifying as a leader because how it is mirrored to them currently isn't something necessarily that they want to be. And so I think some of these big businesses could really help women be their authentic self in that space and embrace them, so that more women actually want to get into that space.
Hmm. That's a good way of looking at it. I never really thought of it like that. Now, I know moving away from, your mega companies and presently in New York as an executive coach, what are some other ways that you can help women reach their goals apart from, even if it may not be leadership, it may just be, starting a company in the music business and actually, like you say, earning more money?
Yeah, chasing the money, definitely. There are various ways that I work with clients. As I say, my goal is to get more women in leadership or running their own business or, just following their dreams. And it can range from, I've helped clients through accountability and building their confidence, helping them negotiate, a salary increase or finally realizing that their values aren't aligned in that business and deciding to leave and go elsewhere and and getting a better job and better support and a better better title, whatever it is. Or women I've helped to set up their own consultancies. They've been laid off from big businesses, decided in this current job climate that maybe it's quite difficult to get the next big gig. So why don't I try and become a consultant and set up my own business? And it's really also about supporting women in that space because I'm on the same road myself. I'm a woman that started my own LLC a year ago, and it is daunting to set up on your own. When you're used to all the infrastructure and all the support that some of these big businesses do supply. And so I find just being in a support space for women to get real about what it is that they want and what support that they need, because a lot of us don't even really take the time to think about that. We're so used to all the labels that are put on us from external places, be it family, friends, society, and or even a version of us that's 5 years ago. And a lot of people don't stop to check in with themselves and think, actually, what is it that I really want for myself? Where do I want to be in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? When I'm 80 years old, what do I want to look back and say about my life? And so the space that I create is a lot of future thinking, which I think can be helpful for people that are really in the weeds of the day-to-day grinds and feel like they're stuck and they've got nowhere to go.
Yeah, now I know a lot of people and myself including before I got consulting as well. We tend to do things ourselves, and a lot of people actually don't see the need for a consulting, and they kind of do it themselves. How do you suggest or encourage women specifically on the train of your services, and how it can be resourceful, apart from everything that you would have said already? How resourceful has consulting been for you and your clients presently now?
Yeah, so I would describe myself as a coach, not a consultant. And I guess the main difference is that as a consultant, you're generally an expert in a field and you're giving advice. As a coach, I'm holding space for others. I'm not giving advice. I am a guide. I'm a cheerleader. I'm a thought provoker. I'm a mirror. I'm various things, but I'm not sort of telling someone what it is they should be doing with their life. I think as women, we're told a lot what we should be doing with their lives, and I have no interest in doing that. What else do I want to say? Yeah, I would just say to anyone who is thinking of coaching, if you can't, because I think a lot of the reason why people don't do coaching is sometimes the cost of it. And I have been doing in the last year a lot of work reaching out to big businesses, telling them what I do and that I do specialize with working with women in music. And a lot of the big businesses, labels, whatever, have really embraced that. And so now I'm also working in tandem with them to support their female teams. So I do work one-to-one a lot with private clients, but I'm also doing work with the industry to make them aware of coaching as a service, how it can benefit their teams, from retention of staff to helping women step into leadership. So I think I'm kind of advocating in this space as well as actually working in it.
Now, I heard you use a big word that I'd like us to, focus a little bit more. You being an advocate for music, women executives. Now, how has that been looking for you? How has the advocacy been? Is it, tedious? Do you find that the companies and people that you reach out to, are they easy to work with, or has it been like really challenging for you?
Look, I think a lot of these businesses are very aware that they have a problem.
Okay.
They're aware of it. It's just some are better than others at addressing it and supporting the women in their businesses. There have been many women at the top of their game in the last, even 3 years that have left those businesses for one reason or another. And optically, that doesn't look good. And so I think a lot of them are interested in partnering with people like me because they want to retain women. They want them in leadership, and maybe they don't have all the answers. And so they're looking to external people also to help them, with this puzzle. Yeah, I mean, 75% of women at some point do experience imposter syndrome. And I think confidence building and having support from external partners like myself can really benefit these businesses. And yes, it's still a boys' club. The previous stat I gave you, 84% of white men still in senior leadership. It is very much still a boys' club. And a lot of women are frustrated against that glass ceiling. And we do need to try to make spaces, for women to be their authentic self and show them that there is a path forwards. Because I think a lot of women get to a point where they actually think, are my values being, mirrored in this business? Is there a place for me? And some elect to leave because they don't feel that it is. So I think the more work that these businesses can do to show, yes, we want to support you, the better it is for the whole ecosystem.
And it was really, interesting that you spoke about the imposter syndrome, and now that is something that is so prevalent these days, especially with women, and constantly being insecure about their leadership and how they should show up every day, and based on that information, how can you, as a coach, Based on the experiences that you would have had before with clients, how have you helped, women overcome the imposter syndrome and minimize moving away from their jobs or moving away from their goals? Is it through encouragement or, coaching? How do you usually maneuver that?
Yeah, I mean, statistically, women are twice as likely as men to doubt that they're ready to step forward for leadership. So it has been proven. And as I said, 75% of executive women experience imposter syndrome at some time. So I think there is a lot of work in the coaching space about facing those, self-limiting beliefs that maybe we have about ourselves and doing some work on that area and recognizing, is this actually true or is this a story that I'm telling myself? And it's kind of like a ping pong game in your head. You have the self-limiting voice, that you're not good enough, you're not doing something quickly enough, comparing yourself to others. And then you have the other side of you that really believes in yourself and can see the leader within you. And it's about me helping them access that area and really building that part of them and recognizing when the saboteur, the self-limiting voice is in control of that person.
Okay. Now, as we're wrapping up, in conclusion, I'd like to ask you a few things. Now, what would you like to leave with our audience, with, and, even if it's women that are listening, women, single mothers, as I know for sure that that is something that a lot of women, struggling with having to manage family and their personal goals as well as their business goals and still wanting to be, on top of things. How could you encourage our audience today, speaking specifically to those topics?
Yeah, I want women to stop proving themselves constantly, taking on extra responsibility in the workplace. And I want them to start backing themselves, to stop apologizing, to stop waiting for permission. I want them to understand, how fabulous they are and not keep shoehorning themselves into something they think they have to be
Mm-hmm.
successful in this industry, because fundamentally you cannot be what you cannot see. And so if there are not women in these leadership positions, showing other women you can lead differently, you can be your authentic self, you can be vulnerable, all of that good stuff. And you know sadly we all know stories of women that haven't helped other women up on the ladder. They've pulled it up behind them. And I saw it's also a calling to other women to support one another. Stop going towards the power and the boys club. Look out for the women, talk about them when they're not in rooms, support them in meetings, all of that stuff that I think goes so far. And as women, sometimes we let each other down. We're not doing that. And so I would really hope, I would implore women to do this. Yeah.
Well, that advice, was really great, and I know for sure you and I are in quite a few of the same communities,
Yes.
and yeah, and communities are really big. It's how we survive. It's how we get things done, and it's basically how we get the support that we need. I'm sure that is what the men that are part of the boys club do. It's what they do.
It's true. I mean, they've been having their golf days for years. Women have not been invited. I mean, it just goes on and on. And yes, so women in music. She said so. Mamas in music. There are so many of these organisations specifically trying to break that and help other women to help themselves and support one another and really show up in those places. Big Ass Kids. Um, what else? Lone Wolves, sorry, it's a community that I recently joined when I moved to New York. You know, being within the community and showing up for one another really is how we're going to change this together.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, how can my audience get in contact with you? For those women out there that may be interested in coaching and, wanting to take those next steps into leadership and owning their right.
Yeah, Lindira, I would love that. You don't have to sign up for coaching. Even if you've got a question, you don't even understand what it is, I would just love to speak to people. I have a website. It is www.sarahpage, coach.com. You can sign up to my newsletter. I have a weekly newsletter. That's also available on the website. I'm on all the usual, LinkedIn, Instagram, I'm there. And it's all Sarah Page Coach is basically my handle. So yeah, if there are any women out there who just want to get in contact, find out what this is all about, or even, I'm not in a position to afford coaching. How do I approach my business? How can I get you involved with them? I can give you tips on that also, and what departments, to speak to. So yeah, would just love community connection and really happy for anyone to reach out.
Okay, great. And thank you so much for sharing with us, Sarah. I'm sure that the women listening, would be so encouraged to see that there are trailblazers out there, that are really, 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 looking forward to seeing more women showing up, being themselves, being authentic, and like you say, not having to apologize for being who we are. And I really appreciated this.
Yeah, I so appreciate your time and the platform, and also the goodness that you're doing for this community, Lindira. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sarah, too, as well. You take care now.
Yeah, see you.
All right, bye.
Bye.